This video is to serve as a review for those of you who have missed class or have forgotten what we learned from the beginning of the semester and would like to review it for our final exam. The first thing we're going to talk about is density. Density refers to how closely compacted a object's matter is in a certain volume. So in mathematical terms, that means density is equal to the mass divided by the volume. Now, in my class, we use a particular method to solve density problems. It's called the guess method. Now, guess stands for given, unknown, equation, substitute, and solve. These are the steps that if you follow, you can solve or get a majority of the points for any particular density problem. Now, many of us struggle with math. Math is hard. Rearranging equations in algebraic ways can be very confusing, but we have used the triangle method to help us figure it out. When putting our formula, which is density equals mass divided by volume, into the triangle, okay, you will have to be able to do this for yourself. You'll be given this formula on your final exam, but it is not in the triangle formula. So you have to understand that mass is in the numerator of the fraction, so the mass goes on the top of our triangle, and then density and volume go below it. Now, let's use our information, our guess method, and our formula to solve the practice problem below. It says Sally has an aluminum block that has a density of 2.70 grams per milliliter and a mass of 9.76 grams. What is the volume of the block? Now, according to our guess method, the first thing I have to do is write down what is given to me in the problem. So the first thing I see that's given to me is that my density is equal to 2.70 grams per milliliter. And I also see that my mass is equal to 9.76 grams. These are the information that I know. This is what was given to me. So I can check off my given step. I've done that. I now have to figure out what is my unknown. What am I trying to look for? That is what the unknown stands for. Is what am I trying to find? In the problem, they ask me, what is the volume of the block? So what I'm trying to find, or what is unknown, is the volume. So volume, I'm just going to write a question mark beside it, because that's the question that they're asking. What is the volume? So I've completed that step. The next step is to write the equation. Now, you might say, well, I have already done the equation. I know it's density equals mass divided by volume. But I'm not trying to solve for density in this problem. I'm trying to look for volume. So I need to write my equation for volume. Now, if we were doing this algebraically, we could rearrange. We could also use the triangle. Now, the triangle method is used when we cover up volume. If you were to put your hand over volume on this triangle, all that would be left is mass over density. So that would tell me that it would be mass divided by density. Because density and volume are side by side, those would have been multiplied by each other. So I'm going to write my formula. Volume equals mass divided by density. And I'm actually going to abbreviate that. Mass divided by density. So I have done my third step, my equation. Now I need to substitute. When I substitute, all that means is to plug in the numbers that were given to me. So I know that my mass is 9.76 grams. Notice, I always write my units with my numbers. Numbers in chemistry without units are useless. You could be talking about 9.76 Sour Patch Kids, 9.76 grams, 9.76 people, right? Units tell you what that number means. So I have 9.76 grams, and my density is 2.70 grams per milliliter. So I have substituted. The last part is to solve. And to solve this problem, I would put this number in my calculator. I would say 9, we always start at the numerator, 9.76 divided by 2.70, and that gives me 3.61. And I have to look at my units. I see that I have grams on the top and on the bottom, so they cancel out, and all I have left is milliliters. I'm going to box in my answer. So I've gotten the last part. So that is how I would solve for density in this problem. Now, there are two types of problems that you will see. The second is called water displacement. Now, I've got the definition written up here, so if you need to pause it to write it in your notes, please do so. So water displacement is a technique used to measure the volume of an object that does not have a normal shape. It involves measuring the difference between the volume of water before and after the object. Okay, so we are going to look, our density formula doesn't change. We still have mass on top, volume, and density on the bottom. But let's look at an example problem, because that's really the only way to kind of dive into this. So our practice problem says Sally has an object that weighs 4.5 grams. She put the object in a graduated cylinder that initially had 10 milliliters of water in it. The water rose to 14 milliliters. What is the density of the object? So if we are following our method, we would first write what is given to us. We know that our mass is equal to 4.5 grams. But I also have two different volumes. I have 10 milliliters of water, and I know that the water rose to 14 milliliters. So the question is what is my volume? Now, that becomes tricky because we know that my volume of water, which I'm going to abbreviate as VW, is equal to 10 milliliters. That's how much volume was in my graduated cylinder. If we draw a picture of our graduated cylinder, we know that it initially had a certain amount of water in it. It had 10 milliliters. But then Sally added the object to the graduated cylinder. And so when she added her object, we'll say that's her object, to the graduated cylinder, the water went up some. And it went up to 14 milliliters. So I know that my volume of my water plus my object is equal to 14 milliliters. But I'm not trying to solve the density of the water. I'm looking for the density of the object, which means I need the volume of just the object. So I can take the difference between our 14 milliliters and our 10 milliliters to determine the volume. So that means that the volume of just my object would be 4 milliliters, because I subtract 14 minus 10 to get 4 milliliters. So that was the tricky part. If you pick the volume incorrectly, if you choose 10 or 14, you're going to have an incorrect density. So now that we have our given, we know that our unknown is our density, so I'm going to put density equals question mark. I need my equation. I know that density is equal to mass divided by volume. I have my given, my unknown, my equation. Now I substitute. I plug everything in. My mass is 4.5 grams. My volume is 4 milliliters, and I solve. I would put in my calculator 4.5 divided by 4 gives me 1.1 grams per milliliter. Notice the grams is still in the numerator, milliliters is in the denominator. They do not cancel out, and I would have my final answer. If you would like further practice problems with density, you can check out the worksheets that were on eClass in the Matter unit.